She was the violet-eyed superstar of Hollywood's golden age, famous for 8 marriages, stolen husbands, and priceless diamonds. But behind the glitz, Elizabeth Taylor's life was shaped by turbulent drama. A fragile child actress thrust into the limelight, a woman battling heartbreak and scandal at every turn, and a survivor who refused to be defined by others' expectations. Join us as we uncover the triumphs and tragedies that made Elizabeth Taylor more than just a beautiful star. She was a force of nature. Before she was the most photographed woman in the world, Elizabeth Taylor was just a young girl growing up in England. Born to American parents on February 27, 1932. World War II was on the horizon, and by 1939, her family relocated to Los Angeles. Her mother, a retired stage actress, saw promise in Elizabeth's striking looks, particularly those unforgettable violet eyes, accentuated by a genetic mutation that gave her a double row of eyelashes. These eyes became a lifelong signature. But at age 7, she was just a child auditioning in a strange city. Her first taste of Hollywood came quickly. Studio heads at Universal, then MGM, were captivated by her mature bearing. Even at 9, Elizabeth had poise beyond her years. Friends later recalled she seemed too grown up for her own good. A fragile childhood overshadowed by adult demands had begun. MGM's publicity team pushed Elizabeth as the next rising star, enrolling her in intense vocal and acting lessons. Gone were carefree afternoons with friends, replaced by a regimented schedule that left little room for a normal childhood. In 1944, at age 12, Elizabeth landed the role that would catapult her from promising newcomer to genuine child star, National Velvet. She played Velvet Brown, an English girl determined to train a horse for the Grand National Steeplechase. The film's success was immediate and overwhelming. Elizabeth's face was suddenly on every marquee. She was hailed as a prodigy, and the studio wasn't about to let the momentum slip. Yet, success carried an unsettling downside: the pressure to stay perfect. MGM executives monitored her weight, posture, even her friendships. She was forced to wear braces on her teeth and later to alter aspects of her wardrobe to maintain a wholesome, family-friendly image. "I never had a teenage life," Elizabeth once said. "I was never allowed to grow up at my own pace." Behind the glamour, she was increasingly anxious. If she slipped up or gained a few pounds, studio bosses threatened to suspend her contracts. Gone was the wide-eyed child who'd found joy in riding horses. In her place was a worried adolescent, constantly reminded that every little detail, down to her eyelashes, was under scrutiny. By the late 1940s, Elizabeth Taylor wanted to break free of the child star label. MGM wanted to keep her in teen roles, but Elizabeth was yearning to prove herself in deeper, more mature parts. At 16, she starred in A Date with Judy, 1948, and Little Women, 1949. While the films did well, they didn't fully satisfy her desire to be seen as a serious actress. Privately, she battled with the studio's interference in her personal life. Gossip columns speculated about her crushes. The studio insisted she not be seen alone in public with any boy. The strain between Elizabeth and MGM execs grew to a boiling point when she turned 18. She wanted out, or at least more control, but her contract had years left. Tensions escalated. How could she break away from the sugar-sweet image that made her famous in National Velvet? Elizabeth found a new way to assert her independence: marriage. In 1950, at just 18, she wed hotel heir Conrad, Nicky Hilton Jr. The wedding was a tabloid sensation, a real-life fairy tale it seemed. But behind the scenes, it was a toxic, short-lived union. Within months, stories of Hilton's gambling, drinking, and possible abuse surfaced. Friends say Elizabeth felt duped. She'd expected a storybook romance, only to find heartbreak. "I have a woman's body and a child's emotions," Elizabeth admitted at the time. She filed for divorce 8 months into the marriage. The media had a field day. The star, who had been America's darling for a decade, was now a divorcee at 19. Public sympathy swung in her favor, but it also set a precedent. Elizabeth's private life would become an endlessly scrutinized soap opera for decades to come. Despite personal turmoil, Elizabeth's career soared. In 1951, she co-starred in A Place in the Sun, showcasing a chemistry with Montgomery Clift that left audiences spellbound. Gone was the girl from children's flicks. This was a grown woman exuding intense, almost dangerous allure. Critics who had doubted her newfound depth were silenced. Her roles in Giant, 1956, alongside Rock Hudson and James Dean, and Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, 1958, with Paul Newman, cemented her status as one of Hollywood's top actresses. Yet each triumph introduced the quest for respect amid scandal. No matter how gripping her performances, tabloids zeroed in on her marriages, her rumored affairs, her lavish lifestyle. Elizabeth juggled the demands of multi-million-dollar productions, MGM's pressure for blockbusters, and the ever-present paparazzi hungry for even a sliver of drama. "I've been through it all, baby. I'm Mother Courage," she quipped. Publicly, she played the role of glamorous star. Privately, she battled insomnia and relentless migraines. The late 1950s brought another emotional earthquake: her marriage to producer Mike Todd and the tragic aftermath. Todd was the love of her life, charismatic, daring, and larger than life. They married in 1957. He showered Elizabeth with grand gestures, including the famous 29-carat Cartier diamond. But in 1958, Todd died in a plane crash. Grief overwhelmed Elizabeth, and she fell into the arms of his best friend, singer Eddie Fisher, who was then married to America's sweetheart, Debbie Reynolds. This became a media firestorm. The public labeled Elizabeth a homewrecker, turning on her overnight. Sponsors threatened to pull contracts. Fan letters turned from adoration to disgust. She, meanwhile, clung to Fisher out of a desperate need for solace. "I was considered the Scarlet Woman of Hollywood," Elizabeth later recalled. It was a defining moment that taught her both the cruelty of public opinion and the fragility of personal happiness. If her life had been scandalous before, it would pale compared to what came next. Cleopatra. The 1963 film became a byword for Hollywood excess: massive sets, ballooning budgets, and most famously, the torrid affair between Elizabeth and her co-star, Richard Burton. While shooting on location in Italy, the paparazzi caught them canoodling on a yacht. Both were married: Elizabeth to Eddie Fisher, Burton to Sybil Williams. Vatican newspapers denounced them for erotic vagrancy. The scandal was global. Yet Fox Studios, desperate to recoup Cleopatra's soaring costs, subtly fed the controversy to keep the film in headlines. When the film finally released, critics panned its bloated production, but audiences flocked to see the star-crossed lovers who'd upended their personal lives for passion. The affair became a marriage, a tempestuous, larger-than-life relationship that saw them divorce, then marry again, only to separate for good. That passion made her an icon of tumult and glamour, but it exacted a heavy emotional toll. Throughout the 1960s and 70s, Elizabeth endured a litany of health crises. Pneumonia so severe, doctors performed an emergency tracheotomy, back injuries, weight fluctuations, each one intensifying her vulnerability. She once joked about having more lives than a cat, but these repeated hospitalizations were no laughing matter. They reflected the physical and mental strain of a life lived in constant upheaval. Yet she refused to slow down professionally. She earned critical acclaim and an Oscar for Butterfield 8, 1960, and another Oscar for Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, 1966. The more life battered her, the fiercer and more compelling her on-screen performances became. By the 1980s, Elizabeth Taylor had weathered multiple divorces, 8 marriages in total, earning an enduring public fascination with her romantic entanglements. However, she found a new purpose when her dear friend Rock Hudson died from AIDS in 1985. Outraged by the stigma and the lack of government response, Elizabeth threw herself into activism. She co-founded the American Foundation for AIDS Research, AMFR, and later started the Elizabeth Taylor AIDS Foundation. Many celebrities shied away from aligning with the cause at the time, fearing it was taboo, but Elizabeth became a vocal champion. She used her fame to raise millions, lobbying politicians for funding and awareness. People who once saw her merely as a scandal-plagued star began to recognize her as a humanitarian force. "I will not be silenced, and I will not give up, and I will not be ignored," she declared. In her later decades, Elizabeth's health continued to decline. Hip replacements, heart failure, and more surgery. Still, she never lost her signature sparkle. She was often photographed in a wheelchair, draped in diamonds, flashing that knowing smile. Despite the toll on her body, her personality remained indomitable. Elizabeth Taylor died on March 23, 2011, at the age of 79. The world mourned a Hollywood legend, but her passing also prompted a reevaluation of her legacy. Not just the storied romances, but the unwavering devotion to causes like AIDS research, the comedic self-awareness about her big diamonds, and the countless ways she challenged societal norms. "Big girls need big diamonds," she famously quipped, hinting at her own relentless quest for love and spectacle. Elizabeth Taylor's story resonates because it's a saga of ceaseless ups and downs. She lost her childhood to a studio system that valued profit over well-being. She navigated wave after wave of tabloid outrage, everything from her home-wrecking reputation to her tumultuous on-set affairs. She faced near-fatal illnesses and excruciating physical pain, yet emerged stronger each time. She transformed personal grief into a global fight against AIDS, leveraging her celebrity for real-world impact. Underneath the scandals and the diamonds, there was a woman of remarkable endurance. She showed the world you could survive near-fatal illnesses, heartbreak, and vicious press attacks and still come out fighting. In her own words, "I've been through it all, baby. I'm Mother Courage." It's that indomitable spirit, paired with undeniable beauty and talent, that keeps Elizabeth Taylor's name on our lips, even today. If this story resonated with you, feel free to check out the channel. There you'll find more stories where I talk about the challenging life journeys of celebrities.